I'd like to invite now Chris White to the stage so he can share with you his experience and why for him, time was such a precious thing. Ladies and gentlemen, Chris White.
Hello, everybody. Good morning. What's up? Come on. I am so blessed to be here, not just in Utah, not just with Master Control, not just BBG, Emmanuel, but just period, just to exist. Just saying time is so precious. So what I'm about to tell y'all, I've told this hundreds of times and I've never told it the same way. And usually I've never been on the clock, but the time's ticking, challenge accepted. So real quick, I'm 43 years old, but for the first 36 years of my life, I was what I call a wandering soul. Wasn't really sure what to do with myself. You know, when you get asked as a kid, like, hey, what do you want to be when you grow up? And it's like, I don't know. How are you supposed to know that? So anyways, I'm actually from Colorado Springs, moved to Irvine, California, lived there from 88 to 96 in Irvine when Orange County had oranges. And then in the middle of the summer of 96, I ended up moving to North Texas and lived there until I graduated high school, class of 2000, with 2,000 other kids. Stuck around, eventually got my bachelor's from UTD, and then worked the country club life, trying to figure out what to do. I figured I had time. So I kept on doing that up until about 2016 or so, and I ended up getting into new home construction. And I did that job for the next couple of years, and the more work I put in, the better I did, the more they gave me. So I never took the time for myself. Go to a doctor's appointment, do anything else, because the more time away, then the more time it was going to take me to catch up. Boom. And so what ended up happening in 2018, I ended up getting these symptoms that I couldn't explain. I thought I had a hemorrhoid, did nothing about it for the first 4 or 5 months. Then I had another lump that grew in my groin. And I was like, well, that's weird. So I went and got that checked. After a handful of different doctor appointments, ended up getting this pathology that I had an ultra rare form of melanoma, extremely rare, like 2.1 per million, probably 1 in a million because of the specific subtype. And the odds were looking very grim, nobody in Dallas. So I ended up going back and forth to Houston about 19 times. And once I realized, oh my God, like I'm gonna have to do all this traveling, I looked at life like, you know, it's in an hourglass. We all have an expiration date, but you never know when it is. But once you kind of see that sand dripping from the hourglass, it's time to kick it into mode. So for the next, I don't know, year plus until October 2019, I went back and forth, trying to do everything I could. And I did everything that I could that existed, didn't exist. You thought of it, I did it. I almost nearly was unalive from all the side effects. Finally got to a point to where I was so sick and so tired and so exhausted. I didn't really look sick, but I had metastasis everywhere. Stage 4 just obliterated me. And it finally got to the point where to go back to any of those major treatments that was supposed to be an end game was too toxic. So one of my last appointments when I was going back and forth to Houston, that's when they finally said, we're out of options with you. Have you ever heard of this thing called TIL therapy? I said, no. Tell me about it. I remember seeing it on my chart, but what is it? So sand's running out. So I'm like, okay, like I'm out of options. Let's get going. They go ahead and tell me that this thing called TIL therapy has been around for decades and decades. Started, I think, late 70s, early 80s out of the NCI. It's been in multiple clinical trials all over the place. And they actually used to have that kind of treatment, but they didn't anymore. So I would have to go somewhere, not even within Texas, but out of state to go do this trial. And it's a one-time treatment. They take a tumor, send it to a lab, take the cells, grow them into the billions. And while those cells are getting prepared, you enter the hospital, they deplete your immune system down to a blank slate. Then they reinfuse you with your cells, activate it, and then that new billions of cells goes throughout your body and eats up all your cancer till it's gone. And it's a one-time treatment. It takes maybe about a month or so, from start to end, but it's a one-time treatment. And I had done all these other treatments, very heavily pretreated. So we end up looking up on the computer. The closest place was in Denver. So made the calls, and I was gonna need 3 total appointments to get to the infusion. The first one was going in to get your consent signed and have the doctor look over you, make sure you qualify. Second appointment would be to have that surgery so they could pull out a tumor and ship off those cells. And the thing is they weren't growing the cells in Denver, they were doing it in Philadelphia at a centralized location. So that was the model for it. So, and then the third trip would be to go back there and then get admitted to the hospital, and you basically like lived there for, I don't know, half a month, if not more. So I go out there and I do the first trip, the beginning of November of 2019. I come back from that trip, round 1. Round 2, I go back to Denver, do the surgery, come back from that trip. They ship my cells off to Philadelphia. I'm back at home in Dallas, and I'm just clinically declining, like bad, like really bad. Wasn't moving, wasn't walking, wasn't eating. If I had to do anything, I was getting wheelchaired around. And I eventually had to go get my baseline scans done. I was able to do this in Dallas while I was waiting, and I did that on December 6th of 2019. 4 days later, went in to go over my results, and this is when it just really hit hard. It was like, Chris, after all this time, now you have a brain tumor, and this is gonna kick you out of the trial. And that's it, it's an exclusion. So since it's a late stage trial, they had a final infusion date and said, that's gonna be January 15th of 2020. But to get back in, you would need to treat that tumor, prove that it was stable or in reduction, and that way, and scan, and then they would let you back in, but you still have to meet this washout. Long story short is I have December 24th was the final scan date, so like 14 days. So went to the radiologist. I was gonna need 5 sessions of targeted radiation. First needed insurance approval. So while I'm at home, like lying in bed, literally just passing away almost, my mom was in the other room crying her heart out with insurance. This is my son's life. If he doesn't get into this, he will die. Man, it's heavy. Took 6 days, we finally got approval, got the mask made. I needed 5 days for these 5 sessions, but we only had 4, so I took what I could get, and on that 4th day, they actually gave me a double dose. So I was grateful to get it all. Then the very next day was December 24th, it was Christmas Eve, and I went and got my brain MRI. And I was like, oh my God, thank you so much. And then I had to fill out my will, end-of-life preparations, because I was told this is an impossible deadline, and I should be considering hospice and settling my affairs. And I was like, if I'm going out swinging, and there's no way I'm not going out without trying. So watch me. If it's 1 in a million, somebody's got to be that one, and I'm going to be that one. And I ended up going out wheelchaired through the airport and got back out to Colorado in the beginning of January of 2020. Saw my oncologist on the 3rd, and then she said my 1 centimeter tumor went to 1.2, but it was inflammation. And they were able to prove that it was pseudoprogression. It goes up before it comes down. They were gonna let me back in. I was like, oh my God, thank you. Thank you so much. That's all I wanted, but I had to wait a few more days. So I got back in the hospital, did my lymphodepletion, got my cells on the 15th, got released from the hospital on the 20th. It's basically 12 days. 6 weeks later, my first set of scans, I had a 50 to 60% reduction everywhere. Within 9 months, I had what's called a CMR, complete metabolic response, no traces of cancer. Scans continued to show that. In February of 2024, this treatment got its FDA accelerated approval for unresectable melanoma. It's the first ever advanced cell therapy for any solid tumor, period, to be approved. Later that year in August 24, I finished my 5-year consent, and I'm still cancer-free. Thank you. Appreciate it. I'm a few seconds over, but quick point of all this is those 3 trips that I was going back and forth from Dallas to Denver, in theory, could be done maybe just once, because that first trip, I could have done that virtually. Second trip, they could have sent a surgeon to me, and then I could have just went out there for that third trip. And so I become a huge advocate, not just for advanced cell therapies, but decentralized options for patients, because that was my option. I either make it or I was gone. And that's exactly why time is so precious, because I always thought I had time. And I realized, no, you never know exactly how much time, so whatever you're gonna do, don't do it tomorrow, you do it today, you do it now. And with that, I'll say thank you. Appreciate y'all.